Instagram. So the first thing we'll go through is our schedule, and then we're going to get to some questions with Dr. Gurley. And please let us know if you can't hear us or see us or something like that. We're trying out some new stuff. Got a fancy Def Dynamics studio here. It's really high end, so we're excited to be live and be bringing some awesome information to folks. So yeah, we're going to do a technical Q&A. So Dr. Gurley, he is here joining us. Austin created Apex Pro, built the software, did all the mechanical design, and basically created the concept that is now been massaged into what it is and what you enjoy using at the track every weekend. So before we get into that, we'll talk about the next month or so for Apex Pro, where you'll see us, where you can find us. If you haven't already, please like and share the video. We really appreciate that. That really helps us boost how many people get to see us. And also make sure to update your Apex Pro app. We'll talk about that again, and I'll let Austin talk about why that's really important to do. But we are going to definitely talk about that. All right, so like and share the video, and also if you did not submit your questions, we've got a bunch of questions to go through. You can comment on the video, and we'll do our best to get to your questions. So welcome, Michael. There's some other folks on here as well. We got a lot of stuff coming up. So this Sunday there is an autocross at the Hoover Met. So we're going to be on track, I guess, for that event with a test and tune, the Alabama Region SCCA. We have a demo sign up for that. After the video is posted, I'll go back and post all these demo sign-ups. There's events for each of these things that are created on Facebook, so everyone can sign up. Hey Michael, hey Connor, got a lot of folks on here already. That's cool. Welcome. So join us at the Hoover Met on Sunday. And then March is a super busy month. We're going to be at the track 4 weekends in a row, and then we'll actually be back the first weekend in April as well for the IndyCar race at Barber. So in March, next weekend, we've got Tracks Unlimited at Barber. I'll post the demo sign-up for that. The next weekend is NASA at Road Atlanta. Then we're back at Barber for WRL, and then finally end the month off with another event at Barber, and then we're back to NCM actually, so National Corvette Museum to end off the month. Again, I'm going to post all that. I'm not going to go into detail about those, but I'll post all that in the comments so that everyone can go in. If you don't have an Apex Pro already, if you want to try it before buying, we'll be doing demos at all those events, and you can try those out. So that's what we have coming up. Pretty busy month.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be good. So just wanted to briefly introduce Austin and let him kind of say a little bit about what he does day in and day out for Apex Pro and kind of where this all started from.
Yeah, sure. So just for people who haven't heard the story, it kind of started at the beginning. So Andrew and I were on a Formula SAE team together at Auburn University. I did suspension and vehicle dynamics stuff was the thing I was most interested in coming through it. And by the end of it, we were kind of both in leadership roles on the team. I was in the technical side, Andrew was on the business side. So that's how we met, and a lot of what Apex Pro does kind of evolved from things that we saw while we were on the team. And in particular, we had a bunch of people that don't know Formula SAE. It's like a collegiate, little open wheelbase cars that are built by engineering students at about 400 or 500 schools around the world. And so since you're a bunch of engineers, you think you're smart and you built this car yourself. And there's a lot of capable people on those teams, but you're always, you're undergrad students and you haven't seen a lot of the world. And so you're not as smart as you think you are. You spend a lot of time, do a good job. By the end of the year, hopefully you built a car that you can compete with, and you barely have any time to test it. And that part of it kind of falls apart. But one thing that we always found was that even if we were good at using data to make the cars faster, because we're engineers or whatever, it was very hard for us to figure out how to make the driver faster at any point. So we kept looking at data, and you think you could study more, write a new math channel in Motec or whatever it was, and go faster, and it just didn't work. And so Apex Pro, what we're making, kind of evolved from that idea of looking at, well, what can you do with the data to improve the driver, and how much of it can we automate? And so looking to automate, that's how we end up with the product that you guys know about, which is mounts on your dashboard and in real time gives you feedback. It's kind of a collection of everything that we were learning about data post-session and combines it, automates it, so you can use it live.
Just distilled to what really matters the most to the driver.
That's right. Yeah, and in the end of it, yeah, exactly. And so kind of in the end, when you're looking at data for drivers, a lot of what you're doing is you're trying to compare where the driver is to the car's capability, and so the Apex Pro just gives you that and an easy to understand package. So
Yeah, absolutely. That explains it.
yes, that's that. Yeah, and
You
then
have your Formula SA Michigan shirt on.
that's right. Yeah,
Rep
that's
the colors.
that's a couple years old now, and yeah, that's right. That's from 2013. When I finished undergrad, hung around school for way too long after that. But we put off some
doing
other
some productive
things.
stuff,
Yeah,
though.
a little busy.
Yeah.
With Apex Pro and some other stuff. So now we're here.
Yeah, got your PhD recently.
That's right.
this
That's
year?
right. So about a year and a half ago, finished PhD in mechanical engineering, studying robotics. So a little bit different, but a lot of the machine learning aspects of what you get in Apex Pro, the stuff you don't normally get to hear about, that I think we're doing today since the Tech Tuesday. A lot of that came from things I learned, during that program.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Awesome. Well, we got more people on here, guys. So welcome.
Cool.
John Allen says he's met some folks on Formula SAE teams and the Big Ten
Awesome.
conference and said they're awesome.
Yeah.
That was really a good place to kind of start building this because, like you said, you think we all thought we were really smart in our respective fields, obviously, but when it comes down to it, it's really a time-related
Mhm.
project. Like
A lot
it's
about
time
management,
problem. Yeah.
and you have to restart every year. That's part of the rules.
Yep.
So you're always running out of time. It
Yeah.
seems like.
You don't always have hundreds of hours to go over, the thousands of different data points we could record. Because we were instrumenting shocks, we were doing,
Yeah.
sweeps through all the setup stuff, and at the end of the day, if the driver just didn't hit the brake pedal hard enough or wasn't comfortable driving the car at the limit, then we weren't competitive.
Yeah, and we didn't really have a lot of feedback. Like when you go to a track day, there's a lot of people who are better than you that you can listen to. And with us, like Andrew was the best of all of us, and he helped a lot. But a lot of times, a bunch of engineers don't know a thing about driving, just like making stuff up.
It doesn't always mean that you're a good driver.
Doesn't
if you're a good
just
engineer.
because you made a fast
Yeah.
car doesn't necessarily mean you can drive it. So.
Yeah, just like race car drivers don't always make good salespeople. It's not always equal. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, so Austin's got his PhD and has developed a lot of other cool stuff. If you guys aren't familiar, if you haven't met us in person, we operate out of a facility called Def Dynamics, and it's basically a venture studio. So we cultivate and grow early stage companies, idea stage companies, and this is all kind of centered around a couple of the concepts and things that Austin created early on while he was still at Auburn. And so Apex Pro was one of the first products, the other one being Brigand Arms, which is a AR-15 handguard product. So enough for the background, and we'll hop in. Good evening, everybody. Still tons of people joining us. We got 14 people live right now. That's awesome. Thanks for joining us, guys. Again, like and share the video, please. That helps a lot. We really appreciate it. And again, if you didn't get your comments in or your questions before 5, just drop a question in the comments, and we'll do our best to get to it. But we'll jump into the Q&A now. So there's a couple things. I'm going to grab this
Go for it.
sheet. I'll throw
Just
the
read the
questions at you.
questions. Yeah, that's
this
great.
is
That's
like
perfect.
Tonight Show host style. So I'll be like David Letterman or somebody. So we just went through the background. So this is a really good question. This comes from John Kennelly. John's with Radiant Racing Tech. He's an Apex Pro dealer. John's done some awesome sales races, Formula V. Hope he's with us. And John wants to know, have you refined the Apex Score grip model since the early Formula SAE beta testing software? And I thought this is especially a good question
for
because
sure.
we've got our product lineup, if you guys haven't seen already, the early stage beta units right here.
That's right. Yeah. So what he's talking about, we've kind of got a display. Maybe it's hard to see, of just the different iterations or generations of prototypes leading up to the product that we sell now, which looks the same as when we started the company, mostly in the form, but it definitely has improved. So coming out, of course, we're always like iterating on the stuff, especially on the app. But some of the most valuable things on the model, like the machine learning part, the Apex core of it, the most important things that's learned is actually people may not have known, but the first product we had used the GPS in your phone to trying to reduce the price or whatever. It didn't work, so we improved the GPS, and there was a lot of stuff that came with that. So a lot of improvements to how Apex maps based on how fast you're going and your location on the track. All that's post SAE. There's been a lot of improvements and still working on improved modeling of the engine power. So one of the interesting things we run to, so it's Tech Tuesday, so sorry if this is too much, but here we go.
Yeah, lay it on.
Yeah, so one of the interesting things is it's a lot easier to model grip, like Apex, corner grip, or account for things on the track like banking or surfaces, different things. It's actually, as far as modeling the car, one of the most difficult aspects, since we're committed to not making you wire anything in, is knowing like what gear you're in and calculating some things about the engine. So there's been a lot of improvements, especially on that front of how do we account for speed, especially aerodynamics has improved a lot over the past year or two, and power model is still improving, still has things to learn. Of all the things we're working on now, we've got most of it handled. Besides that, so
yeah, I think that the aerodynamic component is really interesting because you can make assumptions about if the vehicle's cornering at a certain speed or traveling at a certain speed. The friction circle basically shifts, right?
Yeah, so there's some neat ways to see that stuff, and and the simulator wouldn't show that one, but at some point we'll go draw that. I think we have a video of that, like the way. So we always describe the model in terms of a friction circle, which is a concept people are familiar with. It's not actually how the computer understands the world, but it's a great way to explain it so that you can kind of draw it in 2D, so that as drivers or engineers we can see what's happening. So that's a neat way to think of it. Like if you have drag, it's as if the friction circle is being pulled kind of downward, or to where you're able to brake harder. Drag is like going to slow you down in general, but it helps you brake.
Yeah.
So it's not it's not necessarily bad. Depends on when it happens.
Right.
Or there's some interesting things we've seen. Some cars actually generate lift at certain speeds, like more than you would think. So there's a significant loss of grip with higher speeds, which some people we've seen thought they'd added a spoiler or splitter to their car and helped it, and sometimes it was worse than before. So pretty interesting things learned from that.
A lot of street-based cars do generate lift at certain speeds, just with stock components on the front of the car and stuff like that. Especially when you don't have flat underbodies in the front and air gets stuck in like the different components, wheel wells. Exactly. Peter Krause says app development is great. The core is sound. Thank you, Peter. Glad to have you. Ian Collins, thanks for joining us. Got lots of good folks. Thanks for being there. So the next questions were kind of a couple that I threw in here, and we already kind of talked on it a little bit. So how did we initially develop the concept of Apex Pro? And then we already talked a little bit about Austin's background, but I was going to ask you about your background. But your background,
I think we covered it.
In physics.
Yeah,
PhD,
mechanical engineering, PhD by the end of it.
Yep. Very cool.
My background in automotive stuff is only Formula SAE, so it's my perspective on all this is just engineering and math side of it. That's why it works great with Andrew, because he's got the driving side. I don't personally drive a whole lot.
Spent some time rebuilding a shock in Road Atlanta one time.
I helped Andrew with his cars too.
Definitely been helpful. It gave me a really good setup sheet for the Volkswagen.
Okay, that's right. Yeah,
that was really helpful. So now we're going to go into another category of questions, and those are all of kind of our like general concept questions, background, kind of philosophical stuff. This one's more product use, and this is where we might get into using the app here.
Yeah, cool.
So we'll get our camera guy, Baker, who's behind the screens, running the ops back there, making stuff happen. Baker will jump in here and help us out with that. So the first one I'll answer, and this was from Ian Collins, who's on here with us. Ian, thanks for asking. What are the limitations of the Android version of the app? So we made an announcement a couple weeks ago. We're no longer supporting the development of the Android version, but it's now what you would call a legacy app platform. It's still on the App Store. Works really well with mostly Samsung devices. I think LG devices have a little more trouble with it, but like Samsung and the Galaxy series of phones works really well. It basically doesn't do any of the post-session analysis that you see on the iOS phone or iOS app, but what it does really well is submit data for track attack use if you want to analyze stuff that's available in the track attack software. That's what we recommend using it for. And then we also sell the iPod Touch as what we call kind of the controller for the app, which works really well for most people because we find a lot of people don't like to actually take their primary device in the car with them. So it solves another problem. They're only $180. It doesn't break the bank. So definitely consider that. But yes, Android app won't have any updates done currently. That's not to say that it'll never happen, right? But that's our current line of thinking. So next. And
the other thing to know on the Android, a couple of things I like to say is if you're using an Android app or no app at all, the model that the Apex hardware is generating is identical to what it does whether you have the app or not. So the feedback from the lights, it doesn't matter whether you have an Android or nothing. It's the same feedback you'll get in real time, which we still like to push people to trying to use that as possible and as you're comfortable with watching that. Or you can like put it in a camera, like if you put your GoPro aimed at it. The other thing is, that's right. And I think you said this in the announcement, but the other thing is just like any technology, Apex isn't perfect, and no technology is, and so we work really hard. We have a great team that's developing all these tools, and we're Spitfire coming out with this new stuff. So we made the choice to move to iOS only so that we can give you all the tools that you want.
Yeah.
And then once that's all packaged and clean, everybody's happy with it, that's the time to move to having Android so that everybody can access it at that point.
There. Thanks, Giancarlo, for commenting. We should have the sound back in. You guys let us know if you can hear us. Yeah, I think the plug had fallen out. Yeah, so what Austin was saying is super important, and this is something, if you've seen us at the track, we've really reinforced, is that if you even run the device not paired with anything, the artificial intelligence and what the software is actually doing, the logic behind it, it's still modeling the vehicle, it's still modeling the track conditions, it's still giving you accurate real-time feedback. So if you're capturing it in a camera, if your primary goal is to use it, to determine your braking zones, your corner entry and exit speeds, like I do pretty much at every track, or specifically move it around in the vehicle so that you get feedback on a certain corner. Says that's good. Peter says it's better. Then the feedback's still relevant, and that's right. Really important to note. And the more that you use it, the more familiar you'll get with it. And we can talk a little bit more about that, because I kind of wanted to ask Austin about the novelty of Apex too, because that's something that is using it as often as I do and getting as much value as I've gotten out of it in the car and with the post-session data. Sometimes I fundamentally forget to reinforce how important it is that it does something totally different than what anyone else is still doing. And we touched on that really briefly, but another just kind of basic tech question that I'll let Austin get into is, Ian again says, I know the iPhone GPS hertz is at 1 hertz, which isn't very useful. What rate does the Apex Pro plot GPS data?
Okay, cool. Yeah, so the easy answer to that is the plot is 10 hertz. We picked that for a couple reasons. That's the natural update rate of the GPS, so it's easy to kind of synchronize that, but also since we're designing all these tools so that you can watch them on your phone or your iPad, it's pretty important that you don't overload the phone with data. It also doesn't really matter for driver instruction. You don't need a whole lot more data points than 10 hertz is pretty good resolution. Yeah. So we plot everything at 10 hertz. A little bit separate discussion from that is the Apex hardware itself runs it at effectively 200 hertz. So it uses the GPS and the IMU, and it merges all that information together so that it understands the world a lot faster than that. In a future model, we might increase the update rate for the data you record to that, but again, like right now, it's going to overload your phone, and it's 10 hertz is good resolution for driver instruction, maybe not for car tuning. Like you wouldn't see, if you're trying to tune shock absorbers, for instance, you would want something maybe a kilohertz even. But as far as driving instructing, yeah, we picked 10 hertz.
Yeah, and we very rarely see, I mean, there aren't really any exceptions that I can think of where the refresh rate hasn't been high enough.
Yeah, well, and the other way to think of it is the bandwidth of a driver isn't even 10 hertz, so whereas the bandwidth of a wheel might need to be higher, but exactly. You can't react fast enough to see a whole lot of changes 10 hertz.
Right. If you've got 4-way adjustable shocks and damper pots and you're tuning high speed, damping.
They react pretty quick, but people are about 10 hertz machines.
Exactly. So 10 hertz is the answer there, Ian. So here's another kind of practical use question, but Austin has a lot of good insight into this, and a lot of people ask this. So great question again from Ian Collins. So thanks.
Thanks. Ian. That's awesome. Yeah.
How do I reset the device if I'm swapping between cars? So I'll let Austin attack that.
Yeah. So one of the goals setting out to design the box and the learning, and a lot of if you go read about these kind of models that people make, one of the big limitations is the number of inputs you have to input, the weight of the car and the wheelbase and the track width and all these numbers. So one of our dedications in this is we're not going to have any wires because that's a pain in the ass, and we're not going to have any parameters. That's a pain in the ass. Part of doing that, we actually learned a lot, made something super special. You don't have to put in any numbers, and it can pick up in about a lap, I guess I should say, in about a minute and a half. It can pick up a useful model of your car from nothing. And so we make it so that when you power the unit on, it totally resets. It doesn't remember a thing about the last time you drove. And that's pretty valuable because if the weather changes, not like even raining, but maybe it's cooler in the morning than in your afternoon session. So anything that happens, like external things you can't control that actually affect the performance of the car, it resets, and it can relearn it in about a minute and a half. And then get back to giving you good feedback. So the answer to the question is, if you're going to move it from car to car, there's only one thing that you need to do, which is turn the unit off, and then when you turn it on and put it back in the next car, you do need to make sure you calibrate the IMU. And the way you calibrate it, right now you probably see that it normally prompts you when you try to start a new session, is you get on and you'll see kind of the red lights go across the screen, the app interface lets you get that, and all that does is tells the IMU, it lets it make sure while you're sitting still, determines which direction is up. Everything else it can solve from there by itself. If you have the unit a little bit twisted or a little bit rotated, it can account for that, but it does need to know which way is up from the beginning. So
Gotcha.
that's what I would say, is turn it off. When you put it back in the next car, calibrate it, and you're set. That's it.
Yeah, that's awesome question, Ian. So that's really relevant when you're swapping between cars, or anytime the conditions change. I personally reset it every time I go out, because I've noticed that especially some tracks are super temperature sensitive. Really all are, because the coefficient of friction is very greatly affected by the temperature of the surface, right?
Well, and your tires are going to cool off between sessions, so that's the other thing. You're not going to get back in the car and have the same grip you did at the end of the last session.
Yeah.
So I think resetting is probably, in general, the right solution, unless you go from somewhere. If you have an instructor maybe baseline the car, and then you want to get in and follow the baseline. In that case, you should never turn it off, because like I said, it's going to forget whatever just happened as soon as you turn it off.
Exactly, and then you're going to be basically driving to their lights.
Stop it on the app, but let that blue light keep blinking. Don't hit the power button on the unit itself.
So that's a great point. As long as the blue light is blinking, that's showing Bluetooth connection, then the device is on. It hasn't lost, hasn't deleted the model. That just means it's connected to your phone. And another good way to do that, like we were talking about, if you're jumping between cars and you have it connected to your phone, if you just prompt it when you connect to the device in the app to remember the Apex Pro unit that you've connected to, your phone will automatically reconnect to it when you turn it back on. You don't even have to do anything else. You just turn the unit on, and then you'll hit calibrate and be good to go. We had a question on here which I thought we could get to. Ray Phillips was wondering about the accuracy of the GPS. Instead of the hertz is going to be the sample rate.
Hertz is the sample rate. So how accurate is it? And so the interesting thing is that unless you're in the military or surveying, GPS is never going to be more accurate than about 2 or 5 meters, like 2 or 5 yards ever. That's just how the world works right now. The good thing is that while you're on track, the location, like let's say I say 2 to 5 yards away or meters away, but it's always during the course of any given day, it's probably going to be offset by the same 2 or 5 meters. So your trace around the track, sometimes just because of the way it works, it might be shifted off by a yard or so, but the entire path is shifted. So you can usually tell really quickly like what, why it's off, and then kind of account for that just in the way you inspect it.
It's really amazing when you think about it. We use Apple Maps as like the underlying GPS satellite image. It's really amazing that it plots it as accurately as it does over that with everything that's happening. So I guess a good rule of thumb there, and something I always make sure to tell people, is the map's always relevant to itself. It's always accurate to itself.
The loop that you make around, it probably ends up back where you started, and that's the sign that it's consistent to itself, whether the whole thing shifted a little bit over Apple's map or not. That's
so Ray, hopefully that gets you there. So that is a really good question though, because there's a difference between accuracy and hertz when you're talking about GPS.
And then since Tech Tuesday, just throwing stuff that I think is interesting. So if anybody tells you their GPS is more accurate than that, they're lying to you, in one exception, which is if you have a base station sending you corrections, and if you do, it probably costs you 20 grand. Let's just say you're a surveyor and you have one of those. There's a chance. But if anybody tells you the GPS is better than that, it's not. That the only limitation to ours right now, that 2 to 5 could probably drop, maybe improve by 25% if you had an external antenna. That's something we're looking at in a future model of the unit, but
potential feature.
But again, that's just a feature of the way GPS and GLONASS works. So another Tech Tuesday tip is that
next week we're going to launch another satellite.
That's right. Yeah. So you see improvements there.
The Depth Dynamics satellite will be following everybody around to the racetrack.
We have so we do have a GPS that can use the American GPS system and the Russian GLONASS, which is their version of GPS, at the same time. So it is pretty accurate, and some people sell that as a feature, but it's pretty standard now, except in your phone.
Yeah, absolutely. So the answer, and Ray said that was perfect. Thanks.
All right.
Yeah, that's awesome. So the only way it really gets any better is if it's mounted on the roof.
External antenna on the roof, and the magic of that, Tech Tuesday, is actually because you have a big metal plane underneath the antenna. It's not necessarily that the antenna is any different. It's that there's a big metal sheet underneath it that blocks the signals bouncing off the ground and getting to you, bouncing off buildings and things. So,
yeah, that's awesome.
How about
yeah,
that?
we see that all the time, even when we're trying to,
that's right.
test the GPS or whatever. Anytime you're close to something metal, it's gonna
you might
find
see
you
that,
faster.
or you might see on your traces on the rainbow roads that when you're near bleachers or something, like when you might see a shift in the GPS position because of that. So.
Yeah, all that stuff. Those big structures affect GPS, and if someone tells you that they don't, then they probably don't know that much about GPS. So we had kind of this is Phil Hetherington, who couldn't be with us live. He's from the UK, and he was basically just asking, kind of in general, how does the device, how does the modeling work, how does the software work? But he specifically said, understand changes in grip levels across the width of the circuit. Can the model determine which curbs are beneficial to use and which aren't? If the AR model is clever enough to work all that out, how can the user best see the detail using the display or the app? So there's a lot of things there, Phil, that can be answered through our channels and YouTube and stuff like that. A lot of questions in one. But basically, we can kind of sum that up with, how does the fundamental, when the device, we have a GPS and an IMU in the device, when it's recording, what's kind of the process that happens before we see the lights, appear in real time? What's kind of the process of taking in data and modifying it to create the lights?
Yeah, right. And so to kind of help answer what he's asking, I think specifically is in isolated situations on the track, how does it know all that?
Right.
How could I see that in the post session? I think it's the gist of it.
Yeah.
So the most valuable pieces of the Apex model are going to be the ones that it determines about your car, independent of the particular surface you're on. So way to think of that is like things like we're saying earlier, the aerodynamics. If we're gonna model your car in iRacing or something, it'd be those parameters that you can put in. What's the wheelbase? What's the weight? What's the tire? Do you have aerodynamic effects? Those kind of things that are on the car are the biggest effect. And these little things, like he's right, certain tracks, there's places you hit the curb and places you don't. And it's not necessarily going to know, the model is not necessarily going to know that you hit a curb. It's just going to know how you responded to the grip that was there. So as far as post session goes, you can look and see what the model's predicting at any point, but you're going to have to know if you were the one that hit the curb or not. It doesn't know that explicitly.
That's perfect.
That's kind of probably, but again, the important thing. So, and a lot of times, like that kind of stuff those are not the details that are going to get most people the benefit out of Apex. The biggest thing is going to be, am I braking deep enough into the corner, or am I lifting, or am I able to lift early? Those kind of things you can see easily. And one that kills people is the amount of grip that you get due to banking or the loss of grip due to cresting.
Absolutely.
That's one that you can't feel. I'm not a driver. You can tell them, but that's one that it's we've noticed people do not feel the benefit they get from a little bit of banking and the major loss you get from a little bit of cresting.
Absolutely.
And you scare yourself and all these things. So that's those kind of benefits that follow the car around are sometimes more important than curbs or marbles on the track.
Exactly. I think that's a really important topic to kind of cover, because I spend a ton of time just thinking about, even when I'm on the road, is my foot all the way to the floor on the accelerator? What's the kind of drawing some visual digital telemetry of what is my foot doing on the gas pedal and these other things, but it takes a lot of time to be able to do that on the racetrack. And so what Apex is doing that no one else is doing is, these are things that you have to know with, like you said, technology's not perfect. This is just a tool for us to get the most out of it that we can, right? At the end of the day, we're trying to influence our, understanding our own why of what we're doing and how to improve. So I think it's really important to, and that's why we say trust the lights, because Austin brings up a really good point about cambered surfaces, uphill braking zones. There's a lot of places, I know Peter Krause is on here. Peter, how often do you see people brake early for 13 at VIR coming off the back straightaway? Very steep uphill brake zone. And as a human, a lot of times it takes so much courage and just trust in the car that we tend to brake really early, but gravity actually forces the contact patch into the ground in that uphill braking zone, and we have more grip. And physics dictates you can brake later, right? And so those are the kinds of things that Apex learns whether you actually brake at the limit or not, because
it's going to basically be able to kind of cross-reference, the maximum deceleration rate, and then it's going to also see that there's a
that's
grade
good too.
there.
So back to the question,
Yeah.
sometimes people talk about this just because we don't explain, in very much detail how the model works, and it's not really a map of where you are on the track, and that's it. It doesn't just look at turn 3 and tell you how fast you went last time in turn 3. It's all about making model of your car, and it can take information from any turn and figure out what's accurate in the next one, wherever you are.
And that's really helpful because the kind of underlying assumption that operates off of is that someone's more confident in one corner than another.
Yeah, that's right. So everybody has, novices have 1 or 2 good corners a lap, and that's the ones it learns the most from.
Right.
And then
it takes the good behavior from those good corners and can apply that across the board. So,
exactly.
Phil, when you watch this later on, that hopefully
good
gives you an
question,
answer. Yeah, very good question. We appreciate it. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm still looking through these. So kind of the last section of questions here, and you guys can keep. Okay, well, Ray asked another good question here, so we can do that. Is it distinguishing one corner from another? For example, one that has baking versus one that is off camber on the same track?
Yes.
Yes. It is, Ray. And that was kind of what we had just talked about, so I'm not sure if that came in while we were still. Yeah, there's a little bit of a lag. So a couple of things on the next topic here. This is future plans and updates. So a couple of people are asking specifically about kind of what the direction of the app's going to go in the future, or what kind of changes we can make, more short term that could be helpful. So the first one, I thought this was really helpful, and I apologize I didn't write down who sent this in. My apologies, but instead of the full driver name and the data, so the list of sessions, which we can, you got that on there. So instead of the full driver name, can we have the apex score and fast lap time listed instead?
Okay, so you're saying in this, so you're saying like on this label here, what can we put? So
on the label.
Yeah, okay. So the interesting thing is that is actually just a note that gets automatically generated when the session's saved. So you can change this to whatever you want. That's an interesting idea, so I'll think about that. So the default right now is that the first line of your session note is just the driver's name, but you can change it to whatever you want. So that's probably the way to get around that for now. But yeah, we'll look at that. That's good.
Yeah. So to answer that question, right now it's manually
the way you change that, if
available.
you haven't seen that, is if you're in the kind of data. So for on the main menu, you go to your data, and then these are the names he's suggesting we change. So on any of those, you can slide it to the left, click on notes, and it'll pull up session notes. You can also, once you get into that session, you can put a note on any lap in particular. So same again, you slide them to the left and then tap note, and you're able to modify it.
Yeah, and there's a video on YouTube that a lot of people have watched, and I'd recommend watching, of Pittsburgh International Raceway, and it shows all of these things specifically. But what's important on the notes, like you said, is that that's what will show up on that session screen. So then you can put in fast lap, whatever the lap time is. But yeah, that definitely, and for us especially, I get a lot of other people's data on my device, so it's not just my sessions over and over, whereas most people using the device is going to be their name again and again and again. So it'd be more helpful for them to maybe see that. So awesome suggestion. We really appreciate that. And then we had 2 questions that were virtually the same, from Michael Bosch and from Ashish, both which are close friends of ours and have seen them at the track many times. And it was basically no crew view, or currently on crew view you can see lap time. Will it be possible to see a light bar in the future? That was from Michael Bosch.
Okay, this is actually old app. Okay, yeah, that's interesting. So could you see the Apex Pro lights?
Yeah, would you be able to follow them and basically see the telemetry of the lights?
Yeah, we're looking at that. So part of it's just a balance of the amount of data we send, so we don't kill your phone bill at the end of the month on crew view. But that's totally possible, so I like that. Yeah, for sure. That could be coming soon. If
you have more crew view questions, watch last week's live video, which is down on our timeline and on our YouTube page, because we talked a lot about, we actually specifically talked about how crew view operates, what it uses, cellular or Wi-Fi is required. So that's definitely possible, Michael. It's also, affected by real world things, just like GPS. Certain tracks have better cellular reception than others, things like that. So the more we add, the more possible failure points there are. Ashish asked a very similar question, and that was, does Apex Pro have the ability to overlay data from another driver or from the fast lap data that is shared by users?
Let's see.
We'll do that.
Cool. So I'll run through demo on that. So we're in go to data, and we'll do Barber because we got a bunch of sessions there. So let's say we pull up Zach, and if you want to add, so the first thing is if you want to compare 2 of your own laps or any 2 laps, you see that the lap that's selected, the one that's shown, I bet that'll make it a little cleaner for the video. So you pick which lap you're looking at by selecting, and you see the check mark, little blue check mark shows which one you've got selected. Now some channels you want to compare 2 laps, so the way you do that, I'm going to compare laps 1 and 2. So if you press hard on lap 2, it'll change the display, and you see you've got 2 selected now. So you have both, 1 is blue and 2 is red. The red one is the reference lap, and so we can do neat things like plot the gain loss between those. Those are actually pretty consistent lap times there, so there's not a lot to see in this plot, but so you can pick the 2. Okay, so we can do that same thing with an extra entire session, which is if I scroll to the bottom of this, and on the iPhone it's going to look a little bit different than on this iPad, but I clicked add another session at the bottom, and it's going to pull up a menu somewhere to let you scroll through your other sessions, and any of them that are at the same track we can add for comparison. So I'll pick that. We're already looking at Zach, so I'm going to pick Steve's session here. It's not loading, so
yeah,
I'm
we
not
have,
sure about that, but
we have
that's how you would
slow
get it.
Wi-Fi.
So,
yeah,
that's killing me. But let me try it again. But
yeah,
that's the process. So
yes.
that gets you on that.
Yeah, and the last thing that he was asking, so currently you can overlay any data that's on your device. If you have data from multiple drivers, as long as it's at the same track, obviously you can overlay it by tapping add another session at the bottom of the page. The last thing Ashish was asking, which was kind of bundled into that question, is the data that is shared by users, and I believe he means over CrewView. I could be interpreting that wrong, but I think he means if data is shared or posted to CrewView, is it possible that you could actually, instead of just seeing the lap time or that sort of thing, could you actually see their data if they post to the board? So we're working on this up there. So we got a couple more comments coming in, so I'll address those while we're working on our
it's just 'cause it's turned off,
technical stuff over here.
Yeah.
Oh, just have the computer go dark.
Yeah,
so John and let's see, away. So Sam from New Zealand is here. So that's awesome.
Nice.
So John wants to know, feature request, add ability to export the lap overlay videos, both single lap and more useful comparison laps. A video and or single image would be great. John, do you mean export as in send that so you can view it on a computer? How do you want to see that? And by export, do you mean as part of the CSV file, something that you want to see, or do you mean you want like a web viewer or something of the?
I didn't
of the
hear
app?
the question. Sorry, what's the?
It was kind of a feature request.
A feature request, okay.
Ability to export the lap overlay videos, both single lap and comparison laps.
I see. So the videos that you would hit by pressing play on the data.
Yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting idea. Yeah, for sure. So you
Something
can
to think
definitely, if I can get this show up again, you can definitely record it on your own phone as a video. I know it wouldn't be quite the same as maybe what you're picturing, but you can screen record your own phone, like hit play, run the screen recording, and get a pretty good copy of that. Especially
Save
if
it
you
as a video.
you turn it sideways, make the map full screen, and let it run through.
That's a good solution for that. So short-term screen record the screen of the phone. Welcome. Yeah, so he's saying wants to view it as a standalone video. Yeah, John, what I would recommend doing now is using screen record on your phone to view it. That would be the easiest way. Sam from New Zealand with Away Racing Developments. Sam sells Apex Pro devices in New Zealand, so if anyone is following us from down under, check out Away Racing Developments. He says, on the app, can there be an anti-theft option via Bluetooth? I.e. the app on your phone, Apex Pro, has some kind of lock coding. So you want the ability to lock the app so that somebody, let's see,
what's the
so
scenario?
that someone else can't connect to your Apex. I'm not sure that I fully understand the question, Sam, but maybe anything that you can offer there would be helpful. Is there an anti-theft option via Bluetooth? So I think he's saying he wants an option so that someone else can't connect to the same
to Apex Pro?
but
Okay.
I can't tell.
Yeah, and if you once you connect, no other phone can connect to the one you're on.
Right.
I don't know if that's quite what he's saying.
Yeah, so no one else can connect to it, and also you can also tap, remember this Apex. It'll prompt you at the beginning of the connection process, and you'll be able to connect to the device. So we're still working on getting the iPod or the iPad, displayed again on the screen here. So I apologize for any issues. Oh, Sam's saying if someone steals the unit.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So if someone actually
That's right,
takes
so
the
it's only
device,
tied to your app. Yeah, we could do that.
yeah, that's possible,
That's possible.
Sam. Yeah, shoot me an email, Sam, and
Yeah.
put some more information in there, and we'll definitely consider that, because that's if someone runs off with your device and you don't want them accessing it, that definitely be helpful. Yeah, Mark's giving some good feedback there. All right, guys, so last chance here. If you have any more questions or want to comment, Eric Meyer, I'm sorry, Eric, I always butcher your last name.
Hey, Eric.
Eric says, what new feature do you both feel is most powerful but underutilized, and why? I don't know if that's a leading question or not, but I have several answers to that.
Game loss is cool. The new crew view is cool.
Yeah.
Some people might not know about the awards. Tell them about the.
Yeah, so a couple different things there, Eric, and we just hit on 3 different things that I think are of very, very significant value. I'll start with crew view, because that's what I'm going to end tonight's conversation on again. I think crew view is valuable for a lot of reasons, and the main reason being is that you're all submitting. If you're on crew view, you're a user and you're submitting your lap times and your Apex scores. Everyone's using the Apex Pro hardware, so we're kind of able to see something that's on a very similar lens, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're sharing it over just a phone app, obviously we talked about the deficiencies of the phone's GPS, and then obviously you don't have the grip modeling and everything else that's going on. There's also awards with crew view. So what you'll notice now, if you go to the leaderboard at the bottom of the app and swipe it up, you actually get awards for being on the podium. So if you're first, second, or third at a track, then you will receive an award. You'll see like a silver or a gold token that'll show you your award. In the future, we can use that to do all sorts of different things, whether that's leverage some of our dealers and our partners to offer discounts or products or that sort of thing, or maybe something that we offer, we can offer that to you as well. So those are 2 really important things, and I think the reason that they're important is a lot more philosophical than just being able to compete digitally with each other, but it's because it incentivizes us as a community to get out to the track and to become better drivers, like more technically correct, faster lap times, safer on the track. That's what we're trying to promote. It's not just go out there and set a faster lap time, it's go out there and be a better altogether driver. So those are really important. The gain loss channel is the last thing that we talked about, which is super important.
Okay, so here's the game with this one. This app got built like about 2 hours ago.
Here we go.
So active development and things such as. So let's see.
So John asked any insight into features in the pipeline. So John, this is features in the pipeline at its finest.
Which might include some crashing here. Okay, so let's look at I don't know. I should pick this. The last thing.
Look at something that I did. Yeah.
The last thing I was paying attention to, we were looking at. Is that okay with the map, or should I flip it to that? Is that better? Okay, cool. So we're talking about how do you add sessions and how do you compare laps. So you can select lap, or you can select the second lap by holding down on it, and you get the 2, compare them. So a new feature we're excited about is this gain loss channel. It's easier to look at if we look at probably on speed. So the idea on these, that's the one where that's interesting because someone stopped at the finish line. The interesting thing on these is that what it does is it looks at as you're going around. I know a good one for this. As you're going around the track, it is showing you the amount of time you are leading or trailing the reference lap, and so that'll let you pinpoint locations on the track more even than Apex scores, where I have 2 laps and I don't have much time. What do I want to look at before I go out for my next session? And so that lets you pinpoint where on the track you focus. So 1 lap you might be leading, in one place. It might get switched around. So here's an example.
Yeah, the autocross is a
this one's
good
a great
example.
place. So we got 2 laps that are very tight time. I think we were doing. Let's see, that's 2:38.
Those are pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah. So gain loss is a time channel. It's a time-based metric, and it's very similar to something that would be like a variance channel on others, where you're going to see a graph that shows where on the track you're gaining or losing time. But what's really powerful and what I like is color coding it with the map, which is what Austin's doing here, which is going to show us specifically where on the track.
Yeah. Okay, so here we've got, so I can replay these two. So I'm moving the slider by hand across the bottom so I can stop wherever I want. So you see the two cars racing, and at this point, blue is leading for about the first half of this lap, and then they come in and red actually overtakes at the end. You see where that happens. So for this entire lap, they start at the same place. Blue leads the entire time until right here, the last, I don't know what turn number that is on your course there. That's a Mercedes, right?
Yeah,
so,
that's the Mercedes autocross.
So right here, and then the time was entirely made up in the difference of that last left-hand
one
turn.
corner.
There might have been some traffic or something. I don't know how y'all run these, but yes, that's pretty fascinating. So I don't know much, but I know blue driver needs to figure out what's going on in this turn, and so then that's where you can take over. Like, look at your apex score, look at your speed and lat acceleration. That's
a really good top-down overview on where do I need to focus, and then from there, when you know what's relevant from a time standpoint, now we want to look at apex score through there is what I would look at first. I would switch the channel, go to apex score. I would see, replay the lights so that I can see where the leading lap is actually, what the lights look like from the blue lap through there, where I'm leaving something on the table. And then I would select the red lap and primarily follow it through there and see where the red lights are appearing on the apex device while they're going through there. But I assume that's going to be a little different than the blue lap, right? The red lap's the faster lap. You're probably going to be using the grip better through there. That's right. So then we know to go look at, if we want to look at good behavior tendencies, we go to the red lap and we look at, what we did well there, pat ourselves on the back and go try to replicate that again. And on the blue lap, we can kind of pick up our deficiencies with apex score.
Yep.
And then kind of distill from there any more information. So awesome crowd on here tonight, guys. We have probably our best Facebook Live turnout ever. So just wanted to mention that. Appreciate everyone for joining us. Eric says that is badass with Z's. Good job, guys.
Else is neat. Eric actually was a contributor to coming up with this, which is if I don't want to run through my lap and just watch the dots, where am I leading, where am I trailing, we've got this, we call it a range slider in the top right of your screen, and that'll let you kind of pick a range to look at. So in this case, I'm interested in where was blue slower, and what I can do is I can move this slider and I can disappear everything on the track except the worst part of that lap. So just like we kind of analyzed a second ago, the end of the lap is trouble. And so it's kind of a nice way you can do that with your gain loss to compare two laps, or if you aren't comparing them, you can do it pretty well with apex score. We'll see.
Yeah, and that's cool because it goes back to what we opened the show with, which was talking about, we had an insane amount of data capability when we were doing Formula SAE together. We had a lot of processing power, but at the end of the day, the most important question was which data not to consider, right? We ended up developing something that was simpler because we had too much. So the range slider is really helpful because it you can throw out the corners that you do well in and not focus on those. You can just look at where you need to bring up your performance.
Right. That's right. So I don't know, what can you, so here I got the apex score pulled up, and I'm only looking at where the apex score was bad. So Andrew, what can you see?
Yeah.
Course runs clockwise.
Well, what's really interesting here is I know that this is a banking on the course right here, and I can tell this lack of apex utilization here, lack of grip utilization, is probably going to be some hesitation on the entry to the corner. But you can carry a lot of minimum corner speed here. So obviously these three areas where we see braking is hesitation. So what I'm thinking there is that's a big lift off the throttle, a slow application of the brake pedal. Same thing here. That's just a big lift off the throttle. So those are two really easy areas where we can gain more time through here. This is also going to be hesitancy. So what we can see here after spending just a few seconds analyzing it is I know a little bit about the course, and I know that right here, and right here are all places where we're going to be transitioning off the throttle pedal onto the brake or just transitioning off the throttle pedal. This one we actually don't even have to come out of the gas, right?
And this is the one we know is the difference between his laps 2 and 3 because we watched our gain loss, and we know the only place they're different really is this area. So that's accounting for his half-second loss on a 50-second track.
Exactly. This area right here is where we're going to want to spend most of our time based on what we learned from the gain loss. And we also saw a little bit of underutilization right up in that early part of the
Hopefully
lap
that's
as
clear
well.
for everybody, yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully that's some everyone saying thanks.
All right, cool.
Yeah,
cool.
Mark says good stuff. Thank you. Awesome. All right, guys. So if we have any more questions, we can get those in there. If not, I'll wrap us up with a couple of things. Again, this is a great turnout, and we'd love feedback on timing for these live shows. What works for you guys, and then also remember we'll put this on our YouTube channel. I'll make a Facebook post that shows you guys where the downloaded video is stored so that you can watch it at a later time and revisit this information. It's not every week that we get access to Dr. Gurley's thought process and everything that's going on. So if anybody ever has any questions about what's going on in the Apex technical office, this man's hard at work right here. He's got other projects that are going on too that are really cool, and you guys should check out Def Dynamics if you're interested in learning more about what the entire facility does. But thanks a lot for taking the time to do this.
So we'll do it again.
Yeah, I think we learned something as always, and hopefully you learned something from us as well. So we got one more question here.
All right.
Let's see. So John Allen, is it possible that faster lap times? So John's saying because the data is grip based, or the model is based on the grip, is it possible that faster lap times could still equate to a lesser Apex score? As an example, think of a Spec Miata driver switching between Toyo RRs and Hoosier SM7s, but has developed more confidence in their own skills on the slower tires.
Exactly, and that's one of the neatest things about the Apex scores. It's car agnostic in a way, so at any given track, you should be able to get to some level of Apex score based on your ability in any car, and it rescales to which car you're in, so you totally could get a lower lap time with a better Apex score. And that's actually a neat way to compare yourself, because if you and a friend go to a track day, have totally different car capabilities, it's really no fun to compare lap times. That doesn't mean a whole lot.
Exactly.
So it's a neat way to make a comparison. One thing we've started doing now that we're doing the awards and everything is that if I come into my list of tracks and we can look at Atlanta Motorsports Park, looks like I'm doing pretty good here. So this is we mentioned earlier. This is
Austin's crushing it.
I'm doing pretty good here with so it's interesting. So I'm leading Apex score with 83%, but the par for everybody who submitted a session to the leaderboard is 81. So that'd be like a good target. So you're never gonna get 100% in any given lap on your Apex score. A good target at Atlanta Motorsports Park apparently is 81. Against debugs. I don't know what else I'll have here. So at Barber apparently 77 is a good target. So people are achieving 83, 84%, but 77% is a good target for you personally, no matter what car you're in, no matter what your lap times are.
Right. And that's great, and that actually dovetails into the last kind of topic that I wanted to go into, which is post your scores and post your information to CrewView.
Absolutely.
And we'll show you how to do that here real quick. But what that does is it gives you access to, the more data that we can aggregate for these different tracks, the more accurate that Apex par gets, and that's how you use the Apex score to really know at a quick glance if you're on the pace, if you're confident in the track, if you're utilizing the tire appropriately, right? If you're consistently coming in under par Apex score, it's kind of like the golf score, right? If you can't get to par, then the majority of the players that are playing that course, that are driving that track, have a better score than you do. So that's a good thing to have access to. So submit to CrewView.
And you get in now because they're stacking up. So everybody's claiming the easy, I'm the first one. So you need to get in.
Yeah, my record at Barber didn't last long, huh?
Yeah, Barber. So we had probably 6 Apex users on Barber last weekend. Top 10's full. It's hard to get now. So somebody got a 132, I believe.
Some really fast times. So the last thing we'll end with here. So I'll let Austin actually show you guys the top 10 submission real quick as well, which is how we see the scores that are on the screen. If we want to submit a score to there, we're going to swipe our data session over from right to left, just like we're going to share it. Just show the top 10 submission.
Yeah, this is probably not going to work. But
probably not going to work. Okay, so we're on the test build of the app here. So
I'm not worried about it. So I'll slide this, and if I submit, so see, apparently I've got a record at
Atlanta Motorsports Park. Oh, that's great.
No,
but that's how it works.
That process works for you, and there are all kind of warnings that it might not let you submit them for different reasons, but particularly if you have someone else's saved session, you can't take Andrew's sessions at Barber and submit them as your own.
Sorry, guys.
There's a couple reasons it might block you, but the main thing is you don't get to do any of these kind of fun competition aspects of CrewView unless you go make a user profile, make sure you enable CrewView, and save. And it's going to require that you have an iCloud account. Most people do. It's free. You just set it up with Apple, and then once you save that, you're in. When you record a session, after you've got that updated and working, it's going to automatically submit anything that when you get across the finish line and hit save, is anything that you choose to save, it will submit. But if you've got old sessions that you think are better and might get an award, again, you can go to data, slide any of these to the left, and choose to submit for top 10.
Yep. Also, if you haven't submitted one for your track, you'll notice on the tracks and records list, if there's not an outline of the track there, that means that no data has been submitted for that track. So even though someone might have their session saved and it auto adds to that submission, so like Austin was saying, it's going to automatically update, that's not going to populate the little image of the track we see here. So if you've got data at any of the tracks on the list that don't have the track map, if you go on there and submit your data manually like we showed you with the top 10 list, you'll be the one that gets to draw the track map.
Yeah, we're crowdsourcing the maps from you guys' submissions, so
yeah,
it helps out.
It actually uses your data to draw the map. So Eric Meyer also chimed in, and that's a great way to sign off. So that was my very last point, which was to post scores to crew view, guys. Make sure you tap that top 10. Eric says, is there a place to go and see which track you'll be at in the future? Yes, Eric, there is, and actually I'll do this super fancy.
These. That's great.
Yeah.
Got 2 top 10s, New Jersey Motorsport Park.
Awesome. Oh, did someone beat me at New Jersey Motorsports Park on Lightning?
Looks like it.
Oh, man, Timothy, I had the record in the Ford Fiesta rental car there. That's a bummer. Someone took it over. I'm going to post a link to our calendar page. Thanks for mentioning it, Eric. So if you guys scroll down in the comments, that's where you can find myself and Director of Operations Extraordinaire Baker Heppenstall probably at a track near you soon. We'll have Apex Pros available. Again, I'm going to post some links so you guys can sign up for a couple of the upcoming demos if you guys are in our area. Chris Bucola also says, by the way, it's not fair you're talking about racing so soon. It's still snowing here.
Welcome to Alabama.
Yep, welcome to Alabama. Move down to Birmingham. All right, Baker's giving us the hard cut. So you guys have a great week. Thanks again to Austin for being here.